welcome back to our third podcast here. Barry Javessian is Don Alley of Keeping Bear. And today we're going to talk a little bit about emergency preparedness and how it goes a little bit beyond just having a case of water in your basement and change of clothes and a bag in your car. And I know I've got a lot to learn about this. Don happens to know a lot more than I do. And so Don, why don't you tell us a little bit about emergency preparedness?
All right. Well, the community, the emergency preparedness and prepper community tends to go to the biggest extreme in emergency preparedness. We're talking like plagues, contagion, zombie apocalypse, EMPs, which is electromagnetic pulse, which is going to knock out all the electronics and send us back to the dark ages. And they don't make sure their fire extinguisher is fully charged.
Would that mean the dark ages? Would that mean my phone wouldn't work anymore?
It's possible.
Because I'm all for that.
That's a good point. Yep. So they a lot of these people lose sight of what is likely to happen versus what fiction they want to live out. And emergency preparedness is not a Walking Dead episode. Or learning from that. If you're taking notes about emergency preparedness from Walking Dead, or something like that, odds are you're a little bit off the reservation as far as what's actually going to help you. So we have a course coming up on February 4th, and it is it's kind of an intro course. It's designed to basically help the average family get prepared for anywhere between 3 and 30 days of needing something. After that, you're kind of beyond what you can supply for, and you have to get into a little bit of sustainability. So the idea here is let's do something people can supply for, because that tends to be a little bit easier. Whereas when you actually have to get into sustainability, like planting crops and things like that, it can get to be a little bit more involved. Not to say that stuff isn't needed, but there's first steps, second steps, and third steps. Okay. So our course really kind of goes beyond the fiction and gets into what does a real family need. And in my day job, I'm an engineer, and I work with risk analysis quite a bit, which is our medical device that I work on. It treats patients and what happens if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, what are the mitigations, what is the likelihood of harm to the patient, and so on and so forth. So what I did is, from working with this, I kind of slowly started plugging in like events to it, and saying this actually works for it, and it makes sense. It's risk analysis, and emergency preparedness is really all about risk assessment and understanding threats. So you end up having the severity of an event, okay? And again, the problem with preppers is they go straight to the most severe thing in the world.
The zombie apocalypse.
And they don't really plan for what's going to happen for a massive flu outbreak or something like that, which is actually going on right now. I don't have it.
That was timely.
It was. So we end up rating the event by its severity, how much harm it would cause if it were to befall you. So you can assign these numbers. We kind of put everything on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is complete financial ruin, or death if you're talking about physical well-being on top of it. Severity 1 would be, it's kind of a concern, but I'm not too terribly worried about it. Okay. And people base stuff off of, they instinctively know risk, but they don't really instinctively know the difference between severity and the other factors, which are probability, the likelihood of something to actually happen, or the detectability, which is how much heads up you're really going to have. All right. So we had that meteor that just happened last week, yeah. Right. And we were actually teaching during that time, and boom, we hear this meteor. We go out and check the car to make sure everything's okay, assume more mundane things, which is probably the way it should be. And then I get home and everything else, it's like, wow, it's a meteor. And as it turns out, it's like almost right over my house, which is really interesting. But we assume that it's a transformer blown, or we assume that it's a car crash somewhere, or maybe like a train disrail or something like that. A rock falling out of the sky, we kind of didn't go right to that because we instinctively have a idea around probability.
Normalcy bias too. That's not
Yep.
something that happens every day,
Yep.
so you're not going to think about it. If we have a meteor shower every other night, we're hearing that, then we become used to it. But that's
Exactly.
not, the probability is low.
Yep. And then you have detectability, which is how much heads up you're really going to have. So weather events, we actually have a really decent weather system. We know when bad storm fronts are going to be coming in and happening, and we can prepare for that. So we don't have a big problem with detectability. But again, meteor from the sky, that happened without warning. But really big, like planet-ending meteors and things like that, we kind of know where a lot of those are. It's not to say we know where all of them are and it's a big problem, but we kind of got a handle on what's out there and what isn't. So when you look at the severity of an item, the probability that it's going to occur, and the detectability, you end up with what most people associate as risk. But most people just assume the riskiest thing, like we've been saying, and they don't really prepare for the most likely risk. The most risky item. So again, if you put severity on a scale of 1 to 5, detectability on a scale of 1 to 5, and probability on a scale of 1 to 5, you end up with a rating of 1 to 125 when you multiply all these together. And the highest number is actually your biggest risk. So when you go into an event like a tornado, all right, you have to break it down into its component, its actual threats, which is high wind, water accumulation, disruption of supply chain, like if all the roads get blocked off and everything, which typically happens during a tornado. And you have to break it down into those basic threats. So the odds of a very severe thunderstorm happening, the risk of it is actually higher in Michigan than a tornado because it's more likely to occur. It's not as damaging, it's not as severe as a tornado, but it is more likely to occur. And the detectability for both of them is about the same. We kind of know when this is going to happen. So people will go out and they'll create a bunker or they'll do something for a tornado, but they won't get a generator for power lines or something like that, or they won't make sure all the good stuff in their basement is up off the ground. And part of our course is going into all of this and saying, what are your real risks and your real threats, prioritizing what is most risky, severity, detectability, and probability, and going from there. And from there, you can go down a little bit and say, okay, this thing's more likely to occur, but it's less severe. This thing's less likely to occur, but it's more severe. So I'm going to go away from my most risky thing and start preparing outwards from that a little bit. We end up using a spreadsheet for this in class because it just makes it so much more organized. But the idea is you want to start preparing for some of these things. So you want to know what to do during the event. And to know what you need to do for the event, you then know what you need to do to prepare to be able to do that, right? So if one of your risks is a house fire, during the event, to stop, drop, and roll and get out of the house and have a meeting place and everything else, right? But you want higher detectability to make the risk go down. So you install fire alarms, which is pretty much natural these days. But that's a way to increase detectability. You want to make sure that a incidental fire, like a cooking fire or something like that, doesn't spread and become a bigger problem. So you make sure you've got fire extinguishers and stuff like that. And then you make sure you know how to use them. And then you make sure that the fire extinguishers you've got are the appropriate fire extinguishers for that type of thing. Because like an electrical fire and a gas fire and like a wood fire are all different things, right? So you end up building your to-do list based on what your plans are for the event that happens.
The most likely actual event.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I was in church a couple weeks ago, and there were a couple other law enforcement officers there in church, and some of the deacons had gotten together, and we met afterwards. And this was shortly after the shooting incident down in Texas, and inevitably somebody spoke up because the ushers are responsible for the safety and security of the parishioners in the church, well, as much as they can be. And someone invariably said, well, what should we do in the event of a shooting? And some of the law enforcement spoke up and gave a little synopsis on that, but he said, really, what we should be training for is the medical incidents. That's more than likely what's going to happen. Where's the AED? Where's the first aid kit? Do you know the address of the building, so that if you need to call 911, you can get an ambulance or a fire department to the thing.
Yep.
So the more likely scenarios, it's highly unlikely, praise God, that there should be any shootings in the church. But,
Yeah, and that goes right back to the structure of the course. A shooting such as that is a very high severity item, meaning people are in mortal danger. It's a very low occurrence item.
High
Thousands,
risk, low occurrence.
yeah,
Low incidence.
thousands of churches meet every Sunday and don't have this
Nothing
issue.
happens.
And like you said, the odds of all medical things is higher, even though the severity might not be as high as imminent death. But the severity of any medical response, or the occurrence of any medical response, the probability is much higher. And that's actually where the risks are. So
Somebody trips and hurts themselves on the stairs, or some kid is bleeding.
yeah. So either he actually has a really good academic knowledge of this, or he's got a good gut instinct of it, and just from experience kind of knows. And again, this course is designed to get people over their gut instinct, which is usually, I don't want to say usually wrong, but it's usually what they want to prep for, and get them into what they really should do.
I think more fantasy land. A lot of people want to play,
Yeah.
go off in the woods and play Rambo or something.
Yep. And that's not as likely to happen at all. So once you get the idea of, okay, this is what I need to do for the event. Okay, you have a tornado. So I need to get in the basement. I need to make sure that I've got a secure area in the basement. Now I need to know what I need to do ahead of time, So I need a secure area in the basement. I, ahead of time, make a secure area in the basement, all right? I need to be able to call for help. So maybe I station, a phone down there. You can add a phone to a plan now fairly cheaply.
Mm-hmm.
So you hook it up to the charger, you put it down in your secure spot, you've got a phone down there, That's one of the things you can do ahead of time. But because you need it during the event, or you'll want it during the event, you plan ahead for it. Then you're like, okay, I need a drill. I need to know exactly what to do to get down there. And so you practice your drill. That's where all of this comes in. So ahead of time, you put in your pre-event list, I need to practice this drill, So I have a son, and in the event I'm not home to be directed, my wife and my son need to know what to do. And so we need to go over this drill so that they know what to do, okay? And then there's after the event. What happens afterwards? Well, when you finally crawl out of your basement and it's like the whole neighborhood is gone, right? So you go, okay, I need to call my insurance company. Honey, what's our insurance company? Well, I don't remember. It's in the file cabinet. Where's the file cabinet? It's 3 blocks over. Yeah. So now I need to know, how do I actually get my mitigation?
These are very, very practical things.
Yeah.
This is almost, now we're going to be on disaster planning, now we're going to be rebuilding, which I think takes a lot of people by surprise. They don't exactly understand how to get going again. And
exactly.
That's right.
And so with my insurance papers in my file cabinet that's 3 blocks over, I don't even know my insurance policy number. Mm-hmm. So how do I do that? So I plan ahead. So in my basement secure shelter area that I've got for tornadoes, I put that information. So I'll be able to get to it. All right. So around this whole event, with what do I need to do, beforehand, what do I need to do during, and what do I need to do after, you can plan a whole bunch of things. Then you start filling out your task list from there. All right.
I would say, most people have smartphones now. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot they could pre-store on that phone in terms of numbers and contacts and information like that. So that'll be
absolutely, and it's something most people have on them all the time, and they're not willing to lose. One of the other things, it's a tidbit from the course, is in your secure location, have a go bag or have some type of preparedness bag, which is very different than the mythology of go bags, which we'll get into next episode. But have a USB stick there in your bag, all right? So we all hear insurance companies say, take pictures of valuable items. So you take the picture, what do you do with it? It's in the camera that's 3 blocks over.
Again, these are practical steps.
Yeah.
People don't think to take to their logical conclusions.
Exactly. But, you know, a USB stick is like, you know what, $20 for like 50 gigs now?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 of them here.
Yeah, well, yeah. So you got a whole bunch right there. So put them in your go bag. Encryption programs are available as freeware now, you know, and you can make an executable right on the thing, where you type in the password, it executes and basically recreates your files. So even if someone were to get a hold of this, it's encrypted and it doesn't do them any good.
Mm-hmm.
So all of your information is safe. Now on that, you got your policy, you got exactly what your policy will cover, because there's going to be the guy at the insurance company that's got 300 claims sitting in front of him, and his job is to make sure the insurance company doesn't go bankrupt, and so he's going to be trying to deny your claims left and right.
Yeah.
Okay? So now you've got your policy on that USB stick, all written out exactly what's covered and isn't, and you say, you know, per section 12.3.8.4.1, it says right here, this rider, I've got this. And then he shrugs and says, oh, damn it, and then he has to cover it, you know. So you've got that information in front of you, you got your policy in front of you, you got your payment information and everything else there, and you can do this. You know, this is a localized event, so you're going to have access to a computer at some point, you know. So these are all ways that you can just basically get your stuff together. And you can do this for multiple events. You know, that's just a tornado, you know. What about a fire, or, you know, like floods and things like that. You know, there's a lot of threats out there that a family can look at and say, this is a real problem. And the thing I truly like about our class is it's programmable to the individual. All right, so we don't have to worry about California mudslides. So it's not a threat for me. I don't really have to do it. But out in California, it's like, yeah, mudslide's kind of a big problem. I need to know what to do, right? If you live in a brand new neighborhood that they've clear cut, you know, forest fires are not something you're overly concerned with. But if you move out to the woods and, you know, you got big trees all around you, it's a bigger problem for you. So your probability is higher. So you can start adjusting your plans for your needs. And that's kind of what the class is all about, is teaching everyone to tailor their way through that.
So what you're saying is that my order of gas masks and the nuclear bunker that I've got in my basement probably not going to be very practical for upcoming disasters.
Well, for a tornado, it wouldn't be so bad, and I kind of want to see it now. So, yeah, you probably could have put your money somewhere else, but since you already got that stuff, let's go check it out. And that's ultimately that's what this course gets down to is, do you have unlimited funds?
I'll have to check with my wife about that. But
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Nope. I don't have unlimited funds. So it's a matter of resource allocation. Where do I put my time? Where do I put my money? Where do I put my effort? And if you're putting all your effort into zombie apocalypses and machetes and all this, you know, gear because you're going to go out to the
disappointed, I
woods.
suppose. You know.
Yeah. Who goes out to the woods? You know? Who bugs out to the woods? Oh man, there's a chemical leak and they just evacuated us. I think I'm going to go out to the woods and live this out. You go to a friend's house. You know, you go to maybe a hotel or something like that. If your insurance covers it, you're definitely going there. You know, so the machete you've got in your bug out bag, you know, is great, but, you know, maybe a spare pair of underwear.
Yeah, someone's going to serve you a bit better.
Exactly. So we take the bias out and what the fantasy that we want out, and we put in the realities of things. And that's what we go after. And the first half of the course is all about that risk analysis. It's all about how do I think about this? And then you have to start populating your plans, okay? And your plans are basically any survival scenario plans, which is kind of where it comes back into what most people consider survival, because you need certain things to survive. You need shelter from the elements if the elements are non-conducive. You know, as the human animal is concerned, humans are tropical. Tool use, shelter, clothing, and things like that is what allows us to live in different climates.
Like Michigan.
Like Michigan. But if it was like, you know,
if we're going to throw the keys, and our need for shelter is mitigated somewhat.
Yeah, but I mean, if we didn't have our tool use and it was like, palm fronds and stuff to cover up our private areas, we would not be this far north as a species. We would be down in the tropics. So you start looking at, what do I need in my plan as far as shelter goes, hydration, nutrition, and then mitigation and rescue. How do I get out of this? Mm-hmm. And that's what you actually start populating, all that stuff. And that's where some of the quote-unquote cool guy bug out stuff can actually come back in, because it can be necessary in some areas, but it shouldn't be done to the exclusion of some things. Like, if you have a bug out bag and you're just going to go to the hotel to bug out from a gas leak, I'm not saying don't put a knife and a headlamp in your bug out bag. There's certain essentials that, you just take with you, period.
Toothbrush.
Yeah, but don't forget, like your data with all of your home stuff.
And that was a real good takeaway, a real good piece of information that got me thinking.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we go into as far as the class goes, and we look into it, a lot more and a lot more in depth. We get people to actually, we'll give them a threat, and they will, work on it in small groups and stuff like that. But what really works well, especially if you have Excel or like numbers, if you're a Mac user or something like that, is this stuff is very easily done in a spreadsheet, where you can assign the numbers, do the math, figure out what your actual risks are, and then you have a column for your pre, during, and post-event stuff, and you can just start completely populating with, what do I do, what do I need to do here, therefore what do I need to have prepared ahead of time, and then how do I get out of this mess, And it works for every threat you can imagine.
It's basic. It's how to have a plan. Practice the plan.
Yeah.
Implement the plan. And I remember reading an article about Saul. He was the person who was being interviewed happened to be an airline pilot, and he was an ex-Air Force airline pilot. And they were talking about the miracle on the Hudson. Sully, the pilot who the plane flew through a bunch of geese and took out the engines. Remember that?
Yeah.
To land on the Hudson.
Yeah.
And the interviewer was asking this airline pilot, said, well, what was going through his mind? And he said, I'll tell you exactly what was going through his mind, because he, like myself, was in the Air Force, and we have a checklist for everything. And everybody goes down the plan. They know the plan, okay? Mm-hmm. It's very simple, because they practiced it over and over again. And there's no room for, there's little room for error, I guess, when they do it, because they plan for this.
Yeah. It's basically you're maximizing your response to effectively mitigating this. And really, this is no different than personal protection. If you get training, you have a plan. And if you don't get training, you're learning as you go. And during an emergency, or during like a fight or something like that, where you're actually trying to defend yourself, that's a poor time to learn as you go.
Yeah.
So having all of this stuff out ahead of time, it goes hand in hand. And one of the reasons I like doing what we do here is because the emergency preparedness it's really martial arts against non-people.
Against nature, against acts of God, perhaps.
Yeah, against whatever event you want to put in there. And it's, okay, this is what I have to do to get out of this event and to stay safe and to keep my family safe. So this is what I got to do ahead of time. This is what I got to do after. And it translates exactly over to personal protection. It's just the threat is not a person. It's an event of some type. So that's kind of why I like doing what we do with this stuff, and that's why I think they both merge together really well. So.
And this class is going to be on February 4th?
February 4th. Yep. 10 a.m. out in Brighton.
Okay.
So.
And you can go to the Keeping Bear website to register for this class, and registration is open, right? Yeah,
it's open. And if you're a Keeping Bear alumni, this class is free to you. So it's just our way of saying thanks for doing business with us.
All right. Well, I think that's it for tonight.
Yep.
And I hope to see you up at the event on the 4th, the Emergency Preparedness Seminar. And I think I know I got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of this time.
Yeah.
So, yep. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, this is a very light version of that class. So, yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.